Hi, it's Carolyn. I'm here to help you learn how to bake and decorate amazing cakes. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to do a fondant argyle pattern so it matches evenly to the top of the cake tier, and also how to make a golf themed cake board. So my cake is already baked, filled, iced, and it's in the refrigerator waiting to be decorated. And I have tons of videos showing you how I do that process, and that will be linked below. So let's get started.
I have Gumtex powder, Tylose powder, CMC powder. It's all basically the same thing. I mix it into my fondant. I only use marshmallow fondant. Store-bought fondant is way too soft, and I just prefer to make my own marshmallow fondant. You need a little bit into the fondant, roll it out, let it sit, and it's going to set hard. It's going to be so much easier to cut. It's not going to drag. It's going to be stretchy. I put this in all of my fondant, so I will link this in the description below. And now I rolled this green fondant out pretty thin. You can see it's like an eighth of an inch thick. And do you see how my cake is offset on the cake board? So I need to make a mental note of that. So it's on a 12-inch cake board. I'm putting a 12-inch pan upside down and using a needle tool to trace the outer edge. And then there's a 7-inch cake on top, and I want to put the bottom of the cake pan, not the top of the cake pan, a little offset to the back because it's offset on the board, and trace that as well. And then I'm using this little cutting wheel to cut that center piece out. And then I'm using my fondant smoother just to smooth everything out, and then I'm going to cut that larger circle out as well. And now I have a little bit of piping gel mixed with, thinned out with some water, and I'm running that all over the cake board so this fondant can stick to it. You want enough that it's going to be sticky, but not too much that it's going to ooze out. So just a really thin layer of it. And then I cut that piece, that circle piece in the back so I could open it up. And I don't want to get any of that piping gel on the front of the fondant. So I'm going to fold it back over my hand, and I'm putting the smaller section in the back and pressing that down, making sure that it is meeting the edge of the cake. And that's why I thinned this piping gel out with some water so I can slide this fondant around on that cake board. I'm just wrapping it around here, making sure that the fondant is touching the cake and that the fondant is going over the cake board. And I'm just using that fondant smoother to press it into place. And then where it overlaps in the back, I just get my X-Acto knife and cut through both pieces. And I remove that top piece, lift up the bottom piece, and remove that excess piece and just press that seam together. And now I have a wet paper towel and an X-Acto knife, and I'm pressing the fondant against the edge so I can see how much I have to cut off. And that is a sharp blade, and I'm just removing the excess fondant, making sure that I'm not cutting into that foil board. And I'm just working in small sections until I get the whole way around the cake. And that looks good. I'm going to put that back into the refrigerator so that fondant can set and solidify. And now I want to make the diamond. So I have a cake box lid. I always cut the lids off of cake boxes and save them for things like this. I rolled out all this fondant pretty thin, and I'm just using a diamond cutter to cut a bunch of diamonds out in all of these colors. And I'm just setting them aside on that cake box lid. If you don't have a cake box lid, you can use like a cookie sheet or something. And once I have all of those done, I'm going to set those aside before I put them on the cake. Now I want to roll out this blue fondant really long because I want to put this as the bottom border, but I don't know how thick I have to cut it yet, so I'm just going to leave this here, and I have to measure how thick the border has to be, so I will come back to that. Now I'm getting my cake out of the refrigerator. That icing is cold and hard. I'm not going to mess it up. Now I have a little bit of Crisco shortening, and I need to see how thick I need to cut this border. So I'm getting some Crisco behind these pieces because I can easily take it off and it's not going to stick. So I'm just aligning half of a diamond at the top, putting a full diamond in the middle, and I have a half a diamond at the bottom. And I'm just using my thumb to slide this into place. Again, because I use the Crisco, I can slide it around. And then I have this ribbon cutter here. So I'm trying to see that small space at the very bottom. How thick do I need to make this ribbon? So I'm going to go cut a piece of that fondant off of that blue fondant that I rolled out. And let's slide this into place to see if this fits. And that looks perfect. Like that top half of a diamond came to the top of the cake. So that's a perfect thickness. I'm going to get a real thin layer of piping gel just around the bottom part of that cake where that border is going to go. Try to make sure you don't get any on that green. And then I'm using that ribbon cutter to cut the long ribbon. And let's start in the very back, and I'm going to wrap that all the way around. And where it meets in the back, I'm going to cut it and then press the seam together. And then I like to use my palette knife and press that down. Do you see how there's a little white gap at the very bottom? I'm just pressing that down to make sure that there's no gap and it is perfectly even. And then I'm cutting a bunch of these diamonds in half. So I think the blue and the green were the only ones that were going to be halvesies. So I did that in all those colors, and I'm starting at the bottom and getting a little bit of water behind it. I'm putting half a diamond down, and I'm starting in the back, and then I'm getting a white one and I'm putting that next to it. So I need to build this so the diamonds are touching. I'm not building it up, I'm building it around first. So this way I can make sure that they all fit together. So I'm alternating blue, white, green, white, blue, white, green, white, all the way around the bottom part of the cake. And when it gets to the back, of course, it never matches up, and I'll show you how to fix that. And then I'm going to start on the next layer. So I'm putting the light blue on the half of the green diamond and a whole green one on the half of the dark blue diamond, alternating light blue and green the whole way around. And you see where it doesn't touch in the back, I just have to make sure that I have that pattern matched up correctly. And then I'm doing a whole other row of just plain white diamonds. And then at the very top, I'm doing the dark blue half diamond that has the dark blue half diamond at the bottom. So the next one's going to be green because it's green at the bottom, then light blue, then green at the top. So I'm going to alternate dark blue and green around the entire thing. And because I measured that out correctly, all of these come to the very top of the cake. Now I need to figure out how to fill this in. So I'm holding a piece up and seeing like where I need to cut it, how I need to get it to the right shape. And this is the part that just kind of stinks. That part's sticking out a little bit over the top. So I'm cutting that excess piece off of the top, and I'm kind of just like fitting this like a puzzle, just holding up pieces of fondant. And then I'm using my edge of my paintbrush just to see where I have to cut that. I cut it, and then I hold it back up to the cake and make sure that it fits, and then I'm going to get a little bit of water behind it and stick it down. Now that's sticking out past that green one, so I want to trim that so I can have a more even piece that I cut. So I'm just putting this together like a little puzzle. And now I need to make the little argyle line. So I'm taking a piece of paper, folding it in half and in half again. And then when I hold that up, I need to cut the bottom part off so it sits even. And then what I want to do is make little marks in the center of all of these half diamonds so I know where to line my paper up. So I'm just looking at the very center and making a mark along all of the top ones and then all of the bottom ones as well. This will make sense as I continue. So now I want to line the bottom part of the paper up with that center dot and the top part of the paper up with the center dot, and use my Dresden tool. I'm using the curved edge of my Dresden tool to connect those two dots. So the reason I use paper when I do this is because a ruler is straight and the paper will contour to the cake. So that way I can use the edge of the paper as a guide. So I am drawing a straight line. So I'm just connecting the dot that's in the middle of the green one and the dot that's in the middle of the top green one and connecting those to make a straight line. And then once you get to the back, it's a little messed up because that pattern's messed up, but that's okay. That's why it's the back of the cake. So once I have those all done, I'm going to do the opposite direction, turning the paper the other way and then connecting the two dots that are in the center of the half diamonds the whole way around the cake. And then once I have that done, I'm going to go over all of these lines that I made with my Dresden tool. Now, again, I'm using the curved end of my Dresden tool, not the pointy end, because I don't want to poke a hole through this fondant. So I'm just going over all of these lines that I made just to deepen the detail. And then once that's done, I'm just pressing against the side of the cake with a fondant smoother to make sure everything's straight. And I'm dipping that spatula in some hot water and pressing that icing back down because as I was working around that top edge, the icing got bulged out a little bit, so I just wanted to make sure that everything was even, and let's put that back in the refrigerator. Then I got that out of the fridge. That fondant is hard on that board now, and I want to cut, I'm just freehanding this, the little T, it's not a T, it's like the little golf green, and that green fondant is rolled out pretty thin, so it's a black fondant, and I just freehanded that, and I'm smoothing that with my fingers, and I'm going to put that on the board. And I realized that I cut it a little too big, so I have to cut a little bit more fondant off. So again, I'm just freehanding this just so it fits on the board. And then I'm using a little circle cutter to cut a piece out, and then I'm using that same cutter to cut a black hole, and I'm going to piece that together. And then I'm going to put that on the board and get a little bit of water underneath it and put that down. Don't use too much water. You don't want it to seep out. You just want enough so it sticks. And that looks good. I'm going to put that back in the refrigerator. Now I have this little golf ball mold, and it came in a lollipop mold, so I just cut those pieces off. That way I can piece it together to make it 3D. And when you do that, you need to make sure it's lined up perfectly, or else it'll look a little off center, and I'm clipping that together. And then I have these white meltables and a little plastic icing bag, and I fill that up. And what I'm going to do, put it in the microwave and flip it over every 20 seconds until it's completely melted. And I'm jumbled up some paper towels and stuck them in a small bowl. That way that can set when I put it in the refrigerator without falling. Now that chocolate is completely melted, I'm cutting the tip off of the bag, and there's a little hole in that top part, and I'm just getting the tip of that bag in the little hole, and I'm going to squeeze some of this chocolate in, but I don't want to fill it. I only want to put it like a third to a halfway full, and then I'm tapping it so it can coat all of the outside, so you don't want to see any bubbles through there. So I'm just tapping it down there, making sure the entire thing is coated, and then I could stick the tip back in there and fill that completely. And once I have that full, I'm going to take a toothpick and stick that straight in the bottom, and I'm going to rest that in the bowl and place that in the refrigerator for an hour or two until it is completely set and hard. And now I'm going to make the little 40 for the flag. So I'm getting a little bit of Crisco in these little tappets. And I have a video showing you how I use these, and I will link that below. But I'm cutting 2 small pieces here, and I'm pressing the 4 on one and the 0 on the other. And then just tapping these against the countertop to release them. And I'm going to set those numbers aside and get my cake back out of the refrigerator. And now I need to make this flag. So I have a little lollipop stick, and I'm going to press that down into the fondant where I want it to go, but I need to create a hole. So I'm going to break a toothpick in half and hammer it down into that cake board in a couple different places, because I need to make that hole big enough that that lollipop stick will fit down into it. And once that's done, I have a little bit of piping gel, and I'm getting a little tiny bit of piping gel on that end where it's going to stick into the board, and I'm going to press that down into that hole I made and then hammer that all the way down through the cake drum. And that's not going to go anywhere. Now I need to make the little flag, so I rolled out this red fondant really thin. I have a diamond cutter again, and I'm just going to cut a diamond out, and that fondant is still a little pliable, so I can stretch this out a little bit because I wanted it to be a little bit longer than it was, so I could fold it in half and see that it's going to wrap around that little lollipop stick. So I'm going to get a little bit of piping gel along the back of that. And I'm wrapping that around the top part of the lollipop stick, making sure the top section is hanging over the top. That way I can squeeze it and it's not going to slide down that lollipop stick, right? So I'm just making sure that it's covering the top of the stick. Then I'm getting a little bit of water behind each of the numbers and sticking them down. And then once I have them down, I'm going to use the end of my paintbrush. Sorry, it's blurry, just to get them in the correct position. And then I got that out of the refrigerator, and I just need to fix this a little bit. So I'm removing the clips and carefully peeling this out of the mold. And where it seams together, a little bit of chocolate like forms a little line there. So I'm using a palette knife, something that's really dull, and just scraping off that excess chocolate seam that's sticking out just so it's flat and flush with the rest of the ball. Then I'm going to use a dry paintbrush just to get rid of all of those excess little crumbs that are sticking all over the ball. and just making a mark where I'm going to put it in the board, and again taking a half a toothpick and hammering that down there to create the little hole. And then I need to trim the toothpick that's sticking out of the ball, so I'm just taking my snips and trimming that, and then I can stick that down into the board. And here is the Argyle pattern golf theme cake board.
So there you go. I love to use this argyle pattern when I'm doing like a golf theme cake or a cake for a guy, or I've even done it on christening cakes before. And I found that by doing it this way, by putting the lines in the argyle pattern with my Dresden tool, I just think it's so much easier to do it that way, and I think it gives a better look than trying to make the dotted lines. Now, I know argyle pattern naturally has the dotted lines on it, but I've done that so many times, and I used to make the dotted lines just by hand with an icing bag. And I'm telling you, it's very difficult to do. Your hand starts to shake. It's hard to get the lines in a row. And I just like the look of this. However, if you want to add the dotted lines, you can. I would just get an icing bag with a tip number 1 or tip number 2, some thinned out icing, and then you can follow those lines that we made with the Dresden tool and go over it with some dotted lines. Now, if you're making a golf themed cake board like this, it's important to have the cake offset to the side so you have a lot of room to decorate. Or if you want, have a really big cake board so there's enough room. But this was a 7-inch cake on the bottom, and I have a 12-inch cake board. I usually put 7-inch cakes on 10-inch boards, but when I want to have a lot of decorating space, I'll go up another size. So this is a 12-inch cake board. And as you saw, I did offset that cake to the back. That way I could have space for that little golf tee to fit. Now, I did make this cake board, and I have a video showing you how I do that, and this was made with 3 cake circles. And whenever I add fondant to the top of a cake drum, I like to use 3 cake circles wrapped in foil, and then I add the fondant, and then the ribbon that I wrap around the edge of the board is going to be 5/8 inches tall. And to wrap that ribbon around there, I just used a non-toxic glue stick and got some along the edge of the cake drum and on the back of the ribbon, and just wrap that around the cake. And I show you how I do that in tons of my videos. Now, the top tier of this cake, you can kind of see in the video, there's a line impression texture on there, and I use a special mat for that, and I will link that in the description. I have videos showing you how I use that impression mat, and I will link that video below for you. So here is the finished cake, and this cake was one of those designs that's all of the birthday boy's favorite things all mixed together. And I'm sorry I didn't film the entire cake. I just knew it would be way too long for me to do that. But there were certain watches he likes, certain wine, it was tennis, it was ping pong, his favorite guitar and golf, and all of this was included in this cake. And I have tons of videos showing you how I do like these number toppers and how I use edible images. So I will link those in the description for you as well. So I think that's it. What new techniques did you learn in this video? I would love to know. Leave it in the comments below. And just a reminder, you can get all of my recipes. I have a few ebooks available. I have my favorite scratch pound cake recipes, my doctored cake mix recipes, and all of the buttercream icing recipes that I use, along with my favorite numbers and my favorite fonts PDFs. Those will all be linked in the description. Please like this video if you liked it, and if you're enjoying my tutorials, I would be so grateful if you could buy me a coffee. My link is down below. And I would love it if you would keep in touch on socials, and you could check out my website. And if you want to stick around so you can watch this video next, and hit subscribe and the bell if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. I love you guys. And remember, it's cake. Have fun. I will see you on the next one. Bye.